Hey everyone, I am a little tired, but I'm gonna just blow through these Beat DJ features. We have some new stuff going on in 1.3.4, and it's pretty awesome stuff. Let me clear the console here. So if you don't know, Beat DJ is a program for producing microtonal music live. You can easily improvise and create all sorts of stuff on the fly. So it works by just loading up sounds off your hard drive, and it uses a command line interface, so that's why it looks kind of like I'm coding, but it's not actually code. Just typing in simple commands to control the program, so I can like add effects. And I know this stuff looks a little complicated, but all these little short codes are actually just they're full words, but like shortened as small as possible for simplicity and for the ease of typing. Because when you're playing live, you really want to be able to type fast. So let me just run through kind of some of the stuff I feel like people are missing, that people aren't quite getting, and some of the stuff that is new. So one of the first things I want to talk about is the span command. So people aren't quite understanding this, but basically with span, I think really the problem is people get intimidated by it, and then it's like a mental block in their brain where they're like, does not compute, because they just kind of get overwhelmed by like the math or something. I'm not sure exactly, but maybe it just like is hard to visualize, so then they just block it out. But basically, if I run span phrase on this synthesizer sound, or let's do the top, the high pitch one. So I'm gonna do the selection, which is this number here on the synthesizer. That's a 5, and then the span phrase is this command here. So if I hit enter, I can set up a span, which basically means a length of time that the sound will exist. So I'm going to play it from phrase 2 to, and then the end time will be phrase 4, and the length of the total loop will be 4. So if the length of the total loop was 8, then it would be twice as long, and it would only play from 2 to 4. But now it plays from 2 to 4 every 4 phrases. So you can see if I zoom out, you can see the synth is playing from 2 to 4 every 4 phrases. That doesn't control how it's triggered or anything. It doesn't control the position. It just controls when the sound is allowed to play. So if I was to change this from 1 to 4, it's saying, okay, now the synth can play from 1 to 4, so you can see it's playing a bit longer. And I could do 1 to 3 within the 4 phrase loop. And the phrase in Beat DJ is just equal to 64 16th notes, and which is equal to 4 bars or 4 measures. And if you're in a different time signature, that changes. But if you're in 4/4, it's always going to be 64 16th notes. No matter what time signature you're in, it's always going to be 4 bars. So that's something you have to really worry about now, actually, because if you change the time signature with the time sig command, I can change this to, any time signature I want, but I could choose 6/4 here. It will ask you if you want to update the phrase length to match the time signature. So you can do that by just entering Y here, or just hit enter to accept this default Y. But I'm going to go back to 4/4 for now. I'm going to shrink my font down a bit. It's a little large. Okay. So we also have this new video command, which I'm not sure if I have had a chance to show on YouTube yet. But yeah, you can choose up to 3 videos to play at once. And you can kind of combine them in different ways. So what's actually new in 1.3.4? We have, if you run the new command, you can actually see everything that's new. And one thing that's new actually that came before 1.3.4 is the guide command, which I don't think I've talked about that much. If you run guide, it will walk you through a nice little tutorial with pretty much all the information you need to know to operate BeatDJ to like the level of like a master. Like there's not that much stuff to it, honestly. So you can just do guide 0 and it says, "Hi, you'll be a wizard after reading the short guide. The command line interface has a bit of a learning curve, but it's the fastest way to make music once you learn it. Be ready to slow down and read the instructions carefully." So if you just take a couple afternoons, maybe take one afternoon to go through the first 3 and then one for the next 3 and then one for the next 3 tutorials, you're really going to get all the basics. And it's not that bad. So what else do we have that's new? You can now combine presets, which is really powerful. So let's mess with this hat. So I can say a hat, which is sound 1. I will select by doing that. And I can set the length of it to 1. You can see that shortened the length of the hat there. Now I can bundle it into a group to apply changes. So let's say if I'm working with the roll command, I used to be able to do just ascending patterns, descending patterns, random, or random is a high. Random as an R is the high number randomness, where P is the low number randomness, which basically just gives you a couple different options for how the rolls are going to work. So if I do high, you can see it actually gets pretty glitchy. Almost turn into like an oscillator. This isn't a very good sound for it. Let me swap out the hat with a new hat. So that crazy high-pitched synth is actually the hat, and it sounds that way because of the roll feature. Which just means that it's fitting more notes per chop here. It's like duplicating it a bunch of times inside there. And it creates almost like an oscillator. But now with the way you can combine presets, I can do ascending and descending all in the same command. So I could go up and then down. Let's hear that. You can probably hear it better if I bundle it to 32. So you can see I'm changing the length from 16 to 32, and it's sort of taking all those chops that came from the second 16 section and combining them. So if I was to now do the roll ascending, descending, you can get a better feel for how that works. And you can do the other way around. You could do descending, then ascending. You could do ascending twice if you want. So that's pretty fun. I want like a simple synth. Have this sound. And I'll bundle it to 16, and then if I do the melody command, you can see I can do ascending and then descending melody. So basically with all of these typical commands we use in BeatDJ, if you were able to use like the P pattern or the random, you can now combine it. You can combine them. You can do ascending, descending, random, pattern, yada yada. So I could do ascending and then random for the second half. So that's one thing that's new. And like I said, it works with like dynamics, volume envelope, and the other one is transient, which I haven't talked about transient too much. So I can drop the melody down to 0 and show the transient command. So the transient basically, it's short, it cuts off the front of the sound, which is what is called the transient, and that can really change the vibe of the sound, the feeling, and the way your brain identifies instruments based on the transient often. So if you cut it off, you can almost kind of like change the instrument to a minimal extent. And so now, instead of just doing a single number or just doing a pattern like ascending or descending, etc., I can apply combo patterns, combo presets. And the ascending, when I'm talking about ascending a beat DJ, I'm usually talking about it's increasing in intensity or pitch. So the intensity means that the tail of the sound is getting longer in this case. It's getting fuller as it ascends. The volume envelope works basically the same way if I do volume envelope ascending. What else is new? So we have the auto saving. So when I run stop, it's auto saving the project now. And if you run FIL, which means files, it will open your Sony Air folders, and then inside the having a brain fart. Inside the projects folder, if you go to the auto saved, you can see where the auto saves are going in, and those it only saves up to 16 of them, and they're really just meant to be used as a backup. So don't rely on autosave, but it's just there in case like the program crashes or you accidentally delete all your sounds or something, then you can recover it. But to actually save a song, you just run save, and then you would enter your song name here. And what's cool about the projects is they're like super small. So if you open this and zip it up to send to someone, this one's only 167 kilobytes for this whole piece right here. Just pretty crazy. Even like full songs are only like 5 megabytes, which you can basically like text to someone, which I am pretty impressed that happened. I think it's just because the files are all mono in BeatDJ. They're not mono when you play them back, but they're stored as mono, and they are mono when you play them back, but of course they're spatialized, you know, so it sounds stereo. But that really strips a lot of the storage down, and the other thing is that it only saves what it has to save. Like, it doesn't save extra data that is unnecessary. So a new command that I'm really excited about is the change command. So let me just delete 1 through 6 here. So I'll do 1-6 to select those sounds and do delete, and we'll just get back to basic kick, and I can show how the change command works. So let me load up a hi-hat. Okay, that's not a hi-hat, but it sounds kind of cool. So I'll bundle it to 16. And now let's say I want to just apply some change. So I'll do change, and then I can select what type of change I want to do. Well, I can do a groove by entering G, And that means every time it changes, it's going to either do a dynamics change, a volume envelope change, or a transient change. And it will it'll pick one of those. It's not going to combine them at all. So each time it changes, it resets and it will pick one. And the groove can be really nice for anything rhythmic, because it's not going to be so drastic that it's like jarring. It's just going to be enough to like change up the vibe. It works really well for techno. So I'll do G for groove, and then how often, I'll just do it every 1 phrases. The two phrases is default, which I would typically use when I play. But for this example, I'll just do 1. So it hasn't changed yet. And there, it just changed. I just totally lost my voice. Changing now. And again. So you can see it's really subtle changes, but it just like, it's great because it just stops that sort of like thing in your brain that's like, oh, this loop's getting annoying, and it just fixes that. For the listener, you know, if you're playing live. So I think this command is really going to help BTJ users compete with DJs, in the sense that being able to hold attention in a live space is difficult when you're improvising, and this is really going to make it a lot easier. So we could do the groove type change, we could do the P, which basically will do any of the non-destructive presets like dynamics, volume envelope, transient, roll, or reverse. So let's hear how that sounds. So this one's a bit more intense. Might be a bit jarring sometimes, like this, the roll. But it's still pretty safe. So it kind of goes up in intensity, right? So the next preset is random, which could do any possible changes. So that means it could do a melodic change, could do a dynamic change, could do a volume envelope change, transient roll, reverse, swap. So let's hear how that sounds, and I'll do it every 2 bars just to speed it up a bit. And what's cool is you can layer the changes. So oh, it just swapped it with a different hat sound. You can layer the changes, so like if I want to change the melody every 1 bar, I'd probably do more like 4 bars or something, or 4 phrases, but you can layer this melodic change with the other P preset right here. So this one's running, the P preset's running, and we're going to layer this melodic change every bar. Looks like it swapped it with a really terrible hat sound. There it went again. Let's try it. So you can see it's changing the melody every bar, which works much better on a synthesizer than a hi-hat, but you get the idea. And then to turn that stuff off, well, you could do change mel none to turn off just the melody one, or you can do change none to turn everything off. And then if you want to reset everything, reset all your changes, you can run this reset command, which just removes all the non-destructive changes from the sound. melody is destructive in the sense that it doesn't really have a history. I guess it could have a history, but right now it doesn't, so you have to choose what you want there. And there's a new command, which I don't know if I showed this already, but you can print out the information. So you can print out all the properties of the sound. You can see here is the sound number, rack index, the loop index, and the hat, which is just this name that you normally see here. Then it shows the file path that it got the sound from. You can double click this to open the file path, or you can click any of these to modify the sound. So I could go and click the dynamics and maybe do like a different pattern or whatever. Maybe adjust the pan here. So you can just get a higher level view of what's going on with your sound. And you can print out multiple at once with BTJ. Everything, almost all commands you can do on multiple sounds at once. So I could print out all to see, 0 and then 1. And what else is new? We have print command. We have this melody shift command. So if I have a synthesizer, and I bundle it, because we don't have to bundle it, but bundling it basically groups it into a section of notes instead of just being one note. So that way you can actually create a melody, because otherwise if you try to create a melody, it's just going to change that one pitch. But now I can do a melody, and then if I want to do melody shift, I can just do MSH for melody shift and go up 1 or something, or up 2 or whatever. Let's go down 3. Down 3 again. And then you can see it's printing out the full melody here every time we make a change to the melody. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this feature in, how it prints out every time, because you can also just print it out yourself, but then you could go in here and adjust like specific notes if you wanted. And these numbers are pitch classes from the scale. So this is our scale over here on the left. It's really simple right now. It has 4 notes. Bum, 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 bum. Let's play it. And so you can see this bottom one is 0, this one's 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So when you use these, this melody command, you can access those pitches like that. And then if you go above, then it just loops back around, the octave loops back around. So this 4 becomes 0 and the next octave up. And then 5 would be 1 on the next octave up, etc. And if you go lower, then it goes an octave down. So that's the melody shift command. The arrangement command is really cool because, like I said, some people aren't really grasping the span command that well, which is understandable. So the arrangement command actually makes it more into a visual process rather than a mathematical process. So instead of having to think about the numbers, just look at it visually, and it can be a lot easier to work with. So we can see our chord here. Chord sound. I can start to arrange it, so I can do 2 ARR for arrange, and then I could choose what level of arrangement I want to work at. Let's do bars, so I'll choose bars, and then I can enter a pattern, X being on and dash being off, to decide how I want to play back. So let's do on, off, on. And now you can see that for out to infinity, our chord is playing on for a bar, off for a bar, on for a bar, on for a bar, on for a bar, off for a bar, on, over and over. what's cool is you can combine the arrangement to work at different units. So I could do now on the phrase level, I could say, okay, every 2 phrases I don't want to play, and then I want to play for 2 phrases. So you can see how I just adjusted the chord. So now it plays from 2 to 4 every 4 phrases. I just created this loop, 4 phrase loop, goes off, off, on. And you can see my units are set to phrases right now. Yours might be set to 16th notes. So if you want to change the units that BeatDJ works in, just run the unit command, and then you can select any of these that you feel comfortable with, and you will see it will change a lot of them, not all, but a lot of the numbers that it visualizes. You will be able to see that change, like down here down here on the clock, and then up on the timeline, for example. So I'm going to change that back to phrases. And with the arrangement command, it's very new. I think I'm going to make a couple tiny tweaks to it, but it's basically going to work like that. So what else is new? We have the align command. So this is handy because let's load up like a bass sound. Maybe we'll do precision splitter on the bass. So the precision splitter is this PS command instead of S. And that just gives us a bit more control over the length of chops in the sound. So if I do 0, that's going to be very short chops. If I do 9, it's going to be very long chops. With the bass, I want somewhere kind of in between, like 2. So I'll enter 2, and then I'll enter bass. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so it's debatable if that's good or not, but I will show you how this align command works. So you can see that the loop length is set to 15, or sorry, the loop index is set to 15 here. The loop length is set to 26. Now, 26 is not really 4 on the floor. It's not a power of 2. So to be 4 on the floor would be more like 16 or 32. And then your index might be just at 0 to keep it simple. But of course, with BeatDJ, it doesn't do that for you in this case, because BeatDJ wants to kind of ride the edge of randomness. Like it lets you create weird stuff on accident. And so if it made everything perfect, you wouldn't really have any happy accidents. But the align command gives you a quick option to just tidy that up. If you're like, oh, I'm just making 4 on the floor techno, and that's what I want, then you can just do ALI, and you can see it just set the loop length to 32, which is a 4 on the floor loop, and then set the index to 0. And that bass kind of sucks, so let's swap it. We'll just run swap, and it's going to run. You can hit enter. You don't really need a new search term unless you want to search for a different sound. So I'll just swap it with the same sound type, which is bass, and it's going to run the precision 2 splitter on that again. Let's see how this sounds. Sounds weird. Let's do another one. Let's try another one. There we go. Now I'll shorten the length to 16 and maybe shift it over by 2. Cool. So that's the alignment command. We also have reset, which I talked about. Shortcuts, you can now disable them. So if I run short, you can turn them on or off. And that kind of blocks you from doing accidental keystrokes. I'll turn them on for a sec and show you kind of like, I run FIL and go to my shortcuts.txt file. I'll show you some really handy ones that I've been using. Basically, I set up L plus 0, or L plus any number to change the loop length, and I plus any number to change the index, M plus any number to change the melody, and so forth. And then S plus any number to select that sound, R to roll, V for volume, T for transient. And this is actually working really well for me. So I can show you kind of how I can jam out now. Hope you guys could just see that. Yeah, I think you could see that. Okay. So yeah, here's how I can kind of jam out with those commands. So let me mess with the kick and maybe the bass, and I will turn the arrangement off on number 2 so I can mess with that also. And let's zoom in. So I'll show you how the keyboard shortcuts work. These aren't set up for you yet, but you can just run short to set them up however you want. Like short. But here's how I use it. So you can see I'm just like changing the loop length of stuff, changing the melody, changing the dynamics, just with some really short keyboard presses. It's a lot faster for jamming because when you're maybe changing the kick or whatever, you might be typing like length 1, length 2, length 4, yada yada. But yeah, you can see how just hitting the shortcuts is a lot faster. What else is new? You can now enter random ranges. So I could select a random number from 1 to 5 or any range. Like let's say this kick, I can run length and then do, maybe I want it to be 4 to 16. So any number between 4 and 16. Oops, I did it on the clap. So on the clap, we can see how that works. You can see I'm just changing the length from any number between 4 and 16. And this could be handy for combos, it could be handy for shortcuts, for automations and stuff. I'm imagining that in the future, BTJ might have very complex scripts you can write, where you could like generate a whole song basically, based on some random parameters and stuff like that. So there's a lot that I think will basically emerge out of everything that I'm working on, to the point where it's like, and I'm already seeing this where like stuff's emerging where I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize that command would combine with this command and make this yada yada. So the random numbers is just one extra step to be able to generate interesting things. The name command has been broken into 3, so now instead of saying like 4 if I was going to name it snare, previously it would ask you if you want to replace or do a suffix or a prefix, but now those are broken up into separate commands. So I can say name snare and it just changes the name, and then if I want to like group the drums, I could say, okay, let's do the kick, the hat, and the snare. Or I could do 4 like that. Then I can do suffix, and I can just give them like drums as a tag. So the nice thing about using the suffix is it's basically like a grouping command. So now if I want to edit the drums, I could say drums octave up or something, and edit all of them at once. I'll go back to 0. And I think that's basically it for all the new stuff. I hope this was helpful. By the way, if you're watching this video, and especially if you watch this far and you're not on our Discord, you should come hang out. Just run the Discord command, and we do. Oh, it'll send you the invite and whatnot. But yeah, we do some multiplayer sessions on here now, where we basically will do like a video call on the voice channel down here, and someone will show their BTJ screen, and then you just have to join there, and then go to the website to sonier.net/multiplayer, and you can join the room and you can start sending commands. And we've already made 4 songs this way. It's been pretty fun. So yeah, come hang out, make some music with us, and should be a good time. We're gonna release a multiplayer album somewhere online at some point, and it's not that serious. It's just us messing around and laughing at the funny sounds we come up with. So, all right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.